one thing you never count on when you're doing this kind of stuff, and you have a car that sits outside, is rain.
I have a love-hate relationship with rain. I love that we get rain. I hate that it's happening when I want to be working on the Galaxie and finishing up the floor pan this week. That will be coming next week as the final episode on that floor pan install. Thank the good Lord we're that close. But he saw fit to give me a break today, so we're going to take it to talk about, oddly enough, Swaybars. And we even have model kits on the countertop to display things and talk about why or why not you may want a Swaybar on your classic Ford. After the break.
Restoration of a classic Ford is a journey of discovery. Let Auto.Krafters help you with yours. We offer quality parts for Falcon, Fairlane, F-Series, Galaxie, Maverick, and Pinto. Contact us today.
All right, before I start talking about Swaybars, I wanted to talk to you about why Swaybars can be important on your classic car. One thing I will say is this, I don't know that a Swaybar, a big Swaybar, is a good idea for everybody, but I think if you're one like me who tends to drive to the point that your wife is going, there's a corner, there's a corner, there's a corner, you might consider Swaybars on your classic car because you probably drive like I do, and it'll just scare your wife if you don't. You may understand what that car is doing, but your wife probably won't. The first thing I want to talk about in that is understeer and oversteer. And you may wonder, what are those two things? Well, I have on the tabletop before me an explanation in real time. Well, not real time because it's a model. But we're going to talk about it with the model I've got here on the table. All right, the car that we have here on the tabletop is actually a model of the Dan Gurney 1969 Boss 302 that competed in the SCCA Trans Am Series that year and almost won. They did come back and get it in 70, but in 1969, they didn't quite make it. The Mustang Boss 302s did not do quite as well as Ford had wanted, and I'm getting off into history that we're not going to deal with today. What I wanted to talk to you about, though, is understeer and oversteer, and I'm using our little Boss 302 and my nicely drawn tabletop thing. My art classes finally did pay off, showing a roadway and what happens with understeer and oversteer. Now, what's going on is when you have a car that understeers, which the Mustangs, almost every Ford I've ever run across deal with, is you're going in a corner and you turn the wheels, but that car just really wants to keep going straight. It doesn't want to steer into the corner. Oversteer is when you go into the corner and the back end kind of wants to kick out going into the corner. Now, Parnelli Jones, back in the day, Parnelli probably would have really liked oversteer because he was a bad dude driver. So that's the basics of it. I'm going to hit it one more time just so you can kind of get the flavor of it. Understeer, you go into the corner, it goes straight. Oversteer, you go into the corner and the back end wants to kick out. Now, you ask me probably, why is that important with Swaybars? And that's what we're going to talk about right now. So you say to me, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Every time I get in my car and I kind of sport around in it a little bit, I turn the wheel into a corner and the car just keeps wanting to go straight. Congratulations, welcome to the wonderful and happy land of Ford understeer. There are a couple things that you can do to fix the understeer issue. Most of it involves Swaybars. Actually, Swaybars are a big deal on these classic cars because the Swaybars that Ford typically put on the front end of these things is fine for normal, sedate, everyday driving. But once you start to get a little more sporty, some of the bloom comes off of the road where your old Ford is concerned. It's just the way things go. Now, I know there's going to be some guys that are going to write in the comments below and say, hey, I've got one that's all stock from back in the day. It's a 63 Galaxie and it has the same Swaybar that Ford put on there in 1963, and that's good enough for me. Congratulations, you're probably listening to easy listening music while you're going down the road. And that's fine. Easy listening music now is Led Zeppelin, so I'm right there with you, buddy. But what I wanted to talk about is how you can fix somewhat your understeer problem. Now, Ford, with the cars like this Boss 302, they did a ton to fix those understeer issues. One of the things they did is the arning drop. We've done a couple videos on that. The information on that is below me and also down in the description below. You have a clickety-click link that you can get right to them. But what they did is they lowered the car. They went in and actually changed the position of the upper control arm, and they did a much more dramatic drop than what you would have seen on the street cars, to the point that you would not be able to run the upper control arm system on the car the way they ran them on the race cars, because of the fact that the arm is so far down inside the well that it would be breaking ball joints if you were doing this on a daily basis for months on end. There is a negative wedge kit that's out there in the market for those control arms that you can get to change that if you want to go with the racing drop. But I'll be honest with you and say 99.9% of the street cars that I know of out there do not need that dramatic of a drop on the upper control arm. A lot of the aftermarket suspension kits will get rid of some of those issues by changing the way the control arm mounts and doing the lower setup, but they are set up specifically for that activity, so you'll need to look into those kind of systems as well. But the quickest thing that you can do to help the handling of your classic car is either a Swaybar, or to go in, if you're just a daily driver kind of guy, and put a set of polyurethane bushings on both the outside links and the center link on your Swaybar. These cars probably didn't have that, but they were also running a humongous front bar, and I believe they were also running a back bar, at least in the 1970 models. Ford, in its passenger cars, particularly on the performance cars in 1970 and 71 on up, were running a rear sway bar if you got the competition suspension handling package. On the Mustangs, they didn't really do that much for you if you had a Torino or a Galaxie. You're just kind of on your own. So just know that if you're going to do an aftermarket sway bar in the rear, that's what you're going to run into. But I want to talk to you a little bit about sway bars and what my opinions on those are. So I'm going to drag good old Dan Gurney's car off the table, careen him off into the carburetor. We'll talk about that. All right, so this is the bar for the 64-5 Falcon. It also, I think, fits the Mustang as well, but the chassis similarity, at least at that level in the chassis on the Falcons, is pretty close to the Mustang. What I will say is this: the bigger the bar, the more likely you are to need to go in and actually make some changes to the mounting positions on the car. I find a lot of times, especially in the Fairlane line, because basically for a long time the only bar that was available is a 1 1/8 inch front bar, it tends to rip it out of the mounts. Don't ask me how I know that on the wagon, but I do know it. And we did a video a while back where we actually modified a set of 69 Mustang sway bar mounts to go into the 69 Fairlane. I'll put the link for that down in the description below. But what I find is the regular sheet metal mounts that Ford put on the Fairlanes back in that time frame, probably 1966 all the way up through 1971. I'm guessing they may have changed in 70. I'm not totally sure on that. They're a little less than wonderful. And the reason that's a problem is because you're running into chassis flexing issues, or a chassis roll issue, I should say. We always call these things anti-sway bars, or at least a lot of the guys I know call them anti-sway bars, but they're actually an anti-roll bar. We'll bring Dan Gurney back in. What you're trying to do is to keep that car from rolling out going to the corners, because what it's going to tend to do in most instances is that car is going to want to do this. I'm going to over-exaggerate, obviously. It's going to want to roll into that corner, and that's what's pushing that tire out, because you're losing traction on the inside tire, the inside to the track, and you're putting a lot more pressure on the outside tire. And so what that tire is doing is it's rolling under, and that's causing you to have problems with it wanting to do this or just go straight into the corner. Even on an oversteer, where it oversteers into it, it still wants to slide out. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to prevent that roll. And what you're going to do with that is probably use a front sway bar and a rear sway bar. Once again, if you're doing a passenger car that you're not doing a whole lot to, and you're just driving it to the cruise in on the weekends, you could probably get away just fine with a set of new bushings all the way around on the front sway bar and go to the cruise in and be happier than a clam. Or you can take your front sway bar, put some urethane bushings in both the central location and the outside locations, and be, again, happy as a clam. But if you're driving harder, you're going to want to go with the bigger sway bar, like we've shown you with the 1 inch. Do you want to go bigger than a 1 inch bar? I don't really know that there's a good answer for that. It all depends. If you're going with the bigger than a 1 inch bar, like I said a second ago, you're going to have to modify the chassis to make it work better in there. Should you put a rear sway bar on the car? If you're experiencing understeer, yes. If the understeer is bothering you bad enough when you're driving the car that you're worried about it going into a corner, then you should probably invest in a rear sway bar for your vehicle, because what that rear sway bar is going to do is to cause that load transfer across the chassis this way, and it's going to flatten the car out so it's not pushing all of its weight into that front corner. It's going to actually keep that from happening to a degree. You're probably still going to have understeer issues, but the sway bar is going to greatly reduce that compared to what you have from stock. Now, there are some suspension things that you can do to remove it, but this will make it a lot better. Other things that you can do to help that would be shock absorbers, to go in and do a set of adjustable shocks on it. Gas shocks are okay, but I tend to find that gas shocks actually add spring rate to the car. Most of the stuff out there is pretty heavy duty that way, and it tends to pick the car up a little bit. I know a lot of guys who will go in and redo their car, put brand new shocks on the front and back of it, and it sits up like a buckboard. And the reason for that is usually your shock absorbers. If you go back to a standard hydraulic shock like a QA1 or a Viking, it will cause that to not be as big an issue. And if you buy the right QA1 or Viking, you can actually go in and adjust that shock absorber to get you the good damping and rebound that you want to help it not push so bad going into the corner. Realistically, that's basically all I wanted to say about it. I wanted to do this video, well, partially because it's raining today, but also because this is actually kind of an important thing, and I had struggled with how to talk about this because I got the sway bar in from the guys at Autocrafters, and I wanted to put it on the car, but then I thought about, no, if I put it on the car, it could cause an issue because of what I said with the urethane crush. One thing I will say before I go out here, a lot of times when you get these sway bar ends, they don't come with any kind of lubrication. A lot of these are possibly graphite impregnated, but some of them aren't. I always will use a graphite impregnated grease inside the barrel of your mounts here and here, and even some inside the end mounts, just to make sure that the sway bar doesn't squeak. Because if you don't do that on some of these urethane bushings, if they're not graphite impregnated, you're going to get a squeak out of them, and it's going to be really annoying going down the road, especially if you've got a nice shiny pretty sway bar like this one. It's pretty. I like it. All right, so that's it. With the little toy car on the table, my wife came out here a minute ago, and basically she told me how cute it was that I was playing with my little cars on the table. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, because it's almost like she's saying the difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. She might have a point. In any case, point or not, please do me a favor, go check out the Patreon account. At the $10 a month level, you get monthly meetings with me. And what I'll say about that is this: if we have ever done anything to help you out with your cars, if we've helped you save some money on your cars, you might want to think about putting a little bit of money toward us on the Patreon account. The names that have been going up beside me right here, these are the guys who have actually put their money where their mouth is and are a part of our Patreon deal. They are supporters anywhere from the $10 a month level all the way on up to more than that. And all this money goes toward the kids and toward Andrew. It pays Andrew's salary every week for him to come in here and help me edit so I can do other things and try to get some things going on the back side of this that you guys will never see. Also, check out Super Thanks. It's down here, or maybe down here. I can never remember where, but there's a little thing down there where you can push a little button and you can throw some money in the kitty for us on a one-time basis. We're okay with that too. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm saying if you feel led to do it, that would be a cool thing to do, because again, all that money goes back toward Andrew. At the $10 Super Thanks, I will even, now that I figured out how to do it, I will even give you a mention in the next video after the Super Thanks is put in there. So you'll get you a nice little thanks at the end of the video here. Subscribe to the channel. We're not gonna make it. We're not gonna make it to Christmas, and I'm sorry about that, folks. I've been hyping this thing up, but it looks like you're going to be putting up with this till probably February. We were going great guns there for a little while, and all of a sudden we just absolutely slowed to a perpetual crawl. It happens. This happened to me almost every time I've done this, and it's always been around the holiday season. I'm always disappointed. This would make me stop believing in Santa Claus if it were that case. Not gonna lie. Subscribe to the channel, get your friends to subscribe. February we'll celebrate. I don't even know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna do something pretty cool about it. And, you know, who knows? Finally, be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on down the road. I do have to admit to a dark desire to play with that and just like go back and forth. It's not mine anymore because I actually gave this to Logan. He's already broken the back thing that holds the windshield in at 180 miles an hour. But it's his, so I'm not going to say anything about it. Well, I am saying something about it to you, but he never watches the show anyway, so it wouldn't matter to him. He doesn't care. He comes in, he does his thing, and he leaves. Like on the Ranchero. Which that's coming, by the way. We're going to be doing a frame rail install on the Ranchero. We're going to show you how to scab in a frame rail section since they're not available for that car, and we had to go buy one from a guy about, I don't know, it seems like 100 years ago now. So that'll be going in pretty soon, and Logan and I will be working on that in the shop where it doesn't rain. Getting the idea that I'm not crazy about what happened with the rain today? Taking my knife, going home.